Welcome to the Story Tinker Podcast, a place for in-depth analysis of webtoon stories. Co-hosted by sharp, witty, and dare I say, thirsty fans, we dive deep into every episode, analyzing character struggles, relationship development, and of course, theories. You can follow the Story Tinker on YouTube, podcast platforms, and social media. For bonus content, sneak peeks, and more, you can support the Story Tinker on Patreon. We are really appreciative of your likes, subscribes, and follows on all platforms. Thank you for listening to the Story Tinker, and let's get started. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 82 of Midnight Poppyland on the Story Tinker. And today we have Debbie and Laura.
Hello, Laura here.
So this episode is a heavy episode. So just keep that in mind. There's definitely going to be some emotionally upsetting events. So just so you know from the outset. So we start out with our creepy Gill. And we saw last time, he says, you know, he opened up the closet door and is talking to a dead body on the floor, which we presume to be his wife. And that's where we open up again. And he says, time to start packing up. And this body is just on the floor. It's just awful. And then to make it even worse, he steps on a little toy and you don't see what it is. And he's like, she dropped this during the scuffle. And then you see under his foot, which is utterly symbolic, a little stegosaurus speckled with blood. And he just says, I'll get rid of it together with everything else. He doesn't even think to ask, like, what is this? Why is there a stegosaurus toy in my house with no children? Like, I just realized now, like, he's not even wondering why this is here.
Yeah, that's a good point. He's just pointing out that he noticed she was holding it and then dropped it during the scuffle. Ugh, that's pretty gross. You're right. The symbolism, I didn't pick up on that at first, that he's stepping on it. He's crushing it. And then he kicks it in the next panel.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. And then it's just lying there on the body and it is super poignant. And we're going to get back to it in a bit. So I guess we can discuss, you know, we'll discuss more when we get to that, but it's a horrifying opening. I mean, it's getting heavy. Like this is, you know, we knew that this is a mafia, story and that it was going to have some heavy themes, but this is one of them. This is it. So now we're back to Tora and Poppy, and we have Tora's point of view, his thoughts, and they're walking to get some coffee, and he's thinking, without raising suspicions from the clan or putting myself back on the radar or risking a betrayal from the inside, I'm restricted to keeping everything on the down low and only a handful of my own men. So I know for a while we were wondering, you know, was Tora like out of picture for a while or is it going to be in the future? And like now he's just, you know, this is like clarifying again that he's been off the radar for a while.
In clan duties, you mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Taking that vacation. And he said, I'm in completely over my head. So he feels overwhelmed. And I know for me, like when I read this a couple of times and as I was reading it again, I realized that, you know, I think of Tora and probably a lot of us think of Tora as very capable. You know, we think that he's smart and he's, you know, like intuitive and he picks things up really quickly. And I didn't think about it from his perspective that he feels overwhelmed and he feels inadequate. And that's stressing him out. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I just popped over to the previous episode to see what Tora's thought process was, because it seemed like he kind of started in the middle of a thought, and so I was like, did he have something else he was going to say that was like continuing from the end of the last chapter? And at the end of the last chapter, he and Poppy were holding hands and they were like embarrassed that they were showing more physical affection and that they were like you know, becoming more intimate with each other emotionally as well as physically. And so I think that's part of why he's feeling overwhelmed with Gill and stuff, because he's feeling a little overwhelmed of trying, I guess, is he's feeling a little overwhelmed with trying to explore this new territory for him. He's never had a relationship before. He doesn't know what it's like to be a boyfriend or to have a girlfriend.
Right.
Because he's had sex with people before, but he's never had a relationship with people before. So I wonder if that's part of why he's starting to feel completely over his head, because he has like all these things at once that are happening.
Mm-hmm. And he feels responsible for her safety, and he feels like he's not assured of that. That's making him panic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like he's not used to feeling overwhelmed. Like that's a foreign feeling for him. He's used to being, and he needs to be in absolute control. You know, he talks about being a loner. Well, you could, you know, not being.
Yeah, you want me to read?
And then it's a little bit later, but I feel like that's just something he's so not comfortable with, that not being over his head and not knowing what the next move is, not being able to plan his next move. It's affecting him, and it comes out in this episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
Obviously.
So, but externally, he's still bantering with Poppy. Like he's not showing that stress to her at this point. And she's like, "Oh, you like it black? Really? You got a problem with that?" "No, sir." And continuing his thoughts, he's like, "Because if I'm not a criminal mastermind like Goliath," which is funny. It's funny to hear him being described like that. I'm excited to be this criminal mastermind.
Well, you did create the notebook.
I wonder what his weakness is. I'm assuming it's his arrogance, but you know, I'm excited to see his strengths, like presumably his intelligence, and craftiness. But I'm also excited to see his weakness, and I'm guessing it's something to do with arrogance. Looking forward. And or some intellectual scholarly type like 𝗖ญ่. And I have to say, I'm like, did Lily put this in as a tribute to our dear 𝗖cie, who is in love with 𝗖ญ่and like writes him up to be like, from this like 2 appearances in the comic, she's like, 𝗖ญ่is amazing. So yeah, we're confirming she's putting her stamp.
It's funny.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward. If we have more 𝗖ญ่, I'm here for it.
Same. I'm here for all of it. I don't care what you give me a Lily desk. I'm here for all of it.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And it's like, "Oh, hey, do you remember the first text I sent you?" And she's looking at the stairwell, and we have this flashback of her, this poor little girl, when she was so embarrassed in sending that text. And he's like, "Yeah, you were so polite and shit. Why? What about that?" "I am so polite and cute."
So as I was prepping for this recording tonight, I was reading the other episodes, and in just, I think it's the previous chapter, when Poppy makes a fake swear, and then Tora is like, just say the word. You're an adult. Just say the word. And then here
Exactly.
she is. She still can't do it.
Great. I sometimes feel uncomfortable like reading the curse words out loud. Like I'll usually won't say the F word, but like, you know, I try not to curse. No, here's oddly enough, I curse when I'm alone. I don't curse in front of other people generally. Only my husband. Like, I have a reputation to uphold, but like by myself, you know.
That's funny. I don't usually curse either, unless I'm under like extreme duress. But I thought it was funny that Poppy, even though Tora is like giving her a hard time about her fake curse words, she still can't bring herself. She still can't bring herself to use the words.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way he calls her, and it's like, you're an adult, be an adult. That's just, it's funny. They're getting so much more comfortable with each other. It's just funny.
Yep. And she, you know, has this fond smile on her face. She's clearly recollecting it with nostalgia. And anyway, I was hiding in that corner after sending the text to you. That corner? Why? Were you up to some shady business? Haha, funny. Never mind, you wouldn't understand. I don't know. We've seen a lot of panels of him staring at his phone being awkward, so I think he does understand back in the early days.
Yeah. And I think it's so cute that Tora is laughing a little bit right there. That so cute.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, it's belying his inner thoughts, right? He's seriously worried on the inside and joking on the outside. And he continues thinking, yeah, I might have some street smarts and uncanny intuition, and I'm rarely wrong about people and situations, which I am so proud of Tora for being able to recognize his strengths. Because a lot of people, and especially someone who didn't grow up with affirmation and validation, a lot of people, and even people who did grow up with that, have a very hard time recognizing their own strengths and saying, yeah, I'm good at this, I'm good at that. So kudos to Tora. Everyone should be able to do that. You know, I think that humility is important, but not knowing what you're good at is false humility. And I think it's really important to know what you can contribute to the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier, Debbie, that Tora like has to be in control all the time, and he has to have that control. And part of that is knowing what his limits are. So as he's thinking, he's like, well, I'm not really that good at planning things out, detective work. I'm not super intellectual, but he does know what his strengths are, because that's part of keeping control.
I kind of get the feeling that these are the things that were kind of encouraged in him to stay in this certain lane, to know, to learn how to read people. You know, his street smarts came with the territory, but you know, developing his intuition and all of that. I feel like just the way he described 𝗖𝗿 and Goliath, and it's almost like they all had a role to play, and this is his role, to know to have these certain strengths. So I feel like that's almost like why he knows them, because maybe that's what he was praised on, being able to read people and his intuition. And so that's kind of why he knows that's what he's good at. And like he says, he's always worked alone and never been involved in team operations. So I wouldn't be surprised if we find out that one thing, Vincent, much as we hate him, he might have some skill in helping Tora hone what he's good at and being able to do that.
I think, yeah, that makes sense. And I think you're right, because I think Vincent has some level of like emotional manipulation skills.
Oh yeah.
I've seen him lose control, and that's obviously not very emotionally manipulative. Like that was losing control. But I suspect that you're right. Most of the time, he seems clever enough to know how to push people's buttons and finesse them. You know, like he's a mafia boss after all. Like that's what they're known for, I think.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you noticed now, like the world in the next panel, the world is darkening. You know, and he's, you know, he says, he's, like you said, he's thinking dark thoughts to himself, but he's on the outside, he's just, what do you know, bantering? What do you mean? Never mind, tell me. Meanwhile, he's scanning the environment, and the world is kind of closing in around him. Like it's getting darker around the edges. And I'm trying to, let's see, the whole episode started out pretty somber. I'm going to go back to the last episode, because I remember that when they stepped out, it was like sunny and warm colored. And let's see. Yeah. Last episode, it's much more sunny. And the second we get into this episode, it's already much more somber and gray toned and cold. So, and yeah, it's reflecting Tora's reality, where he is stressed out.
And then he's standing around and he's still thinking. And when it comes down to it, I'm just muscle for hire, not some battle tactician. So he's like still having those thoughts. But then Poppy talks and his attention is drawn to her, and the background is white. So like the darkness goes away and he's just focusing on her for that, at least that one panel. She says, I don't want to, you'll just make me feel silly.
Right. And he notices how cute she is. So yeah, like she's in his world. She's making that disappear just a wee bit.
Mm-hmm.
But he has to restrain himself. He's holding his arm. He's like, crap, I want to hug her again. And
control.
Instead of saying it, he's just like, I'll tickle ya. Physical contact, but he can't bring himself to like actually hug her. No, dude, just hug her. Why? What's wrong? Nothing's gonna happen if you hug her. It'll just be good.
It's all good things.
And the background changes again.
Right.
So now it's pink and cute. And it's like, I guess it's a reflection of his change in mood. He's a little bit more playful. I'm drawn to her. So cute.
Yep.
I love the panic look on his face, like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, it's really cute. Like, you can try. And he says, tracking down Gill has been challenging to start with. And then we continue, he's like, they're laughing. Promise I won't make you feel silly. I'm very sensitive, haven't you heard? Which was Quincy's line, and it was so cute.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I can trust Quincy's character assessment of you. Like, nah, you can trust it. You might know jack shit about that romance crap. He writes just as much as I do, meaning he doesn't know romance, but he reads people better than he lets on. It's usually blind optimism that gets him into trouble. Oh boy, I relate to that so hard. I love that. I love the fact that he recognizes Quincy has blind optimism, and I love the fact that Quincy has blind optimism. I'm very much like that, and I love Quincy to pieces. And when Tora said that, I was like, oh, that's one of the reasons I like him. I love people who are just like, life is amazing and everything's great and everything's gonna be wonderful and I'm so excited to be alive. Like, I love that so much. So thanks, Tora, for voicing and articulating what I liked about Quincy.
It's also really nice to see, like, kind of learn more about Quincy and to see him really, he really does appreciate him, to see Tora's appreciation, understanding. And it's almost like we're getting little bits every episode. We get a little bits and pieces more of who they really are. And, we're filling in those blank spots. And it's nice to know that, we're starting to learn more and more about Quincy and how sharp he really is, that he's not this kind of silly, fluffy, brainless kind of playboy that he came across. Most of the first season, he's really sharp and he's got a good head on his shoulders. Very interesting.
And it's also interesting to see that Tora, like, as much as he sees each other in real life, when he's away from him, he'll be honest about his qualities,
right?
Which is nice to see.
It's also interesting that I think it highlights their role in the mafia, the way they interact with the world and the way they talk about each other. So Tora is saying that Quincy's blind optimism is what gets him in trouble, because Quincy is in a little bit of a more privileged situation. He can be optimistic, and maybe he's just fooling himself at this point. Maybe he's trying to get out of the mafia. Maybe he thinks he doesn't. I don't know. We don't know that much, but he doesn't have to see a lot of the seediness that goes on, and Tora does a lot of the seediness that happens. He's ordered to. So he doesn't have that optimism because his world is so much darker.
Yeah,
very true. And probably also their backgrounds. Like, I know I had a very positive upbringing. My husband had a pretty dark upbringing, and I have a very positive outlook. He has a more pessimistic outlook, and I think it's definitely because of our experiences when we were younger. So Quincy, was privileged in many ways, and Tora right away was thrown into the nasty part of life.
Yeah, by the same person.
right.
Right.
Yeah, Vincent treated them very differently. Yeah, they had a very different experience when it was the same person. Yeah.
I often thought it was the dark light, the kind of yin yang, the blonde and the brunette. I always thought that was very interesting, the way they were.
Very true. Even in their dress, right? Like, whereas casual, Quincy is flamboyant.
Yeah.
I love everything. I love him so much. He really manifests.
He lets his trauma fly.
And so now he's back to his thoughts about Gill and about tracking him. There's only so much ground the few of us can cover in a day. And Ronzo is highly skilled at manipulating the city's surveillance network, but there's only one of him. And his hacking ops are too high risk to carry out for extended periods of time. And now I'm thinking, I'm like, city's surveillance network. Dude, like, what kind of city has this extensive surveillance network? Like, is this like an authoritarian state?
Yeah.
Never mind. But and now we see him hooded up in a dark bedroom. And he says, he's thinking, sensors are all in place. So flashing back, I broke into Gill's house a while back and found nothing. Not surprising, but with so few leads, I have to try. And he's thinking to himself while he's there in his house, he must have the notebook on him. That would explain why he's been so careful to stay out of sight. So looks the windows are open, looks like he climbed in there. And if he's gathering the footage that the notebook leads to, he'll have to stash his loot somewhere. And then he hears a voice. Little Mont one. This is very sad.
This is heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Little one, it's mommy again. And he, he's thrown off and he's like, there's a kid? Lonzo never said anything about a kid. Why do they always come with a kid? It's like, ow, like, what have you done, Tora, before that involved a kid? Like, I think we can all imagine that he maybe had to kill a parent. So, anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't sound like he's had to kill a kid, though.
We
don't know.
We were
Yeah,
hoping not. Yeah,
we're hoping not for sure. Yeah,
definitely.
I don't know.
but I feel like it does show. I mean, because Gill killed this lady, we're assuming. We saw at the top of the episode, and he looked like so maniacal about it. He looked so like sociopathic about it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and then here's Tora. He looks very guarded, like he's really on edge. And not to say that he would have killed her, but he doesn't want to cause harm that he doesn't have to. Is my read into this.
Mhm.
Yeah, she's safer with the mafia hitman than she was with her husband who killed her. I mean, that's irony, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Darla actually said something very interesting. She said maybe Tora held back on like pursuing Gill too much because of what he overheard. Maybe subconsciously, like he felt like he was protecting, the dad. Which is interesting. Whew.
Or protecting the future kid. Maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's could be. How smart, Darla.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So now we see Tora's like leaning at the door, and we see behind him is Gil's wife sitting on the couch, and she's like holding something in her hand, and she's saying, Daddy's been expecting you for years. He'll be overjoyed to know you're here. But Daddy is busy right now, so we'll wait a little more to tell him, okay? So clearly she's pregnant, and she hasn't told Gill yet at this point. And he's like, I don't need to hear this. I'm out of here. And he kind of stops because he hears her say, anyway, look what Mommy made for you. You can't see it now, but it's a little dinosaur. It's like, oh. And, he stops there. And then you zoom in on her, and she's got this smile on her face, like this tender smile. And she's holding the stegosaurus. She's like, do you like it? Oh,
No. And the lighting changes also. I mean, obviously she's not going to sit in a dark room. Tora's in a dark room, but like it's so warm and inviting, and she looks so happy
and hopeful, and it's so sad. I don't mean to lie. It really is incredibly sad, and it's so simple, but it's so sad. It's just
and
very well done.
Yeah, and the way that the story is set up, the fact that we know before this whole thing happens that she's dead, that's what makes it poignant. Like if we would have read this scene and then she would die, it would have also been emotionally impactful, but it would have been in a different way. Like this is just reading it and she's dead and her Gill killed her. It just breaks your heart.
Yeah. It would have been more shocking the other way. This way it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, and Tora is like pauses. You have a focus on his eyes, right? The eye is the window to the soul. He's experiencing some emotions, and then we have a flashback, and everything's white, everything's bright, and we have these little hands reaching for a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and someone is saying it's called a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and it's someone whose hands are bigger than his. I don't know if they're adult hands. I don't know. Who do you think those hands belong to?
I'm very torn. I'm wondering if that's his hand and that's Goliath, his brother's little hand, and like he's showing him, this is my toy, because that still looks like little young child's hands. Both of them look like child's hands to me. So
Yeah.
that was my first take on this. But then I said, well, you know, it could be an adult with small hands, and that's his hands because he loves dinosaurs. I'm assuming we'll get more about this at some point, but obviously that's a baby, the one on the bottom, or a very, very young child.
What do you think, Laura?
I hadn't considered that it was Tora Goliath. That would be kind of sad in its own right. Because I was hoping that this was Tora, the little baby, like toddler Tora, and like why he likes T-Rexes so much. It like started from this point. It could be an adult with small hands. We know Poppy has small hands, like she's a small adult, so it could be anybody. We don't know. Like, is this his mom? We don't know. Is this like the only memory he has of his mom? Is it someone from the orphanage? We don't know. Is it someone from the clan? We don't know.
Yeah, if it's his mom, you know, that brings the question, like, was she available? Was she loving? And then did something happen to her? Because whoever this person is, it seems like a positive, very positive memory to Tora. It's a smiling dinosaur, everything's light and white. So it seems like this person was caring. So, you know, did he have that? And what happened that it got taken away? What happened that it couldn't take care of him anymore?
Also, you don't know if the hand, I'm sorry, you don't know if the hands are reaching for it because it's being given to him, or if it's reaching for it because it's being taken away from him. It's like heading towards him or being pulled away from him. So you really don't get everything out of this picture.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, to me, the fact that it's so brightly lit shows that, to me, I think it's a positive memory. So I don't know if it'll be, but I mean, it's a fair point. Yeah, I mean, the hands also, it looks a little bit like Tora's skin color. So the little hands.
Yeah.
With this cute little chubby, you know, like those dimples.
The little chubby.
Yeah, I guess it could be being someone taking it away, but I would guess that it's being given to him because it's like, oh, do you like this? It's called a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Like this is what this is. This is what it's called. That's
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I assumed it was being given to him, but I'm staring at it going, it looks like it could also be being pulled away. So I'm overthinking it, I guess, but
could be.
Yeah,
it's definitely an important memory. If it's from a young age, and it's either an early and only memory or an important memory or both.
And it flashes to memory after he hears this soon-to-be mom talking to her unborn child.
Right.
So it's something that, you know, maybe it's some sort of maternal figure. If it's not his mom, if it's not Tora's mom, maybe it's some sort of maternal figure that had a similar interaction with him when he was a little kid.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
That's a good point.
And then it goes back to Gill's wife, and she looks worried now and says, "Please be okay, Gill." And she's still holding the little stegosaurus. Oh my gosh. And then she starts shaking. "Please do the right thing. Your family needs you." And she's starting to cry. And it's even more heartbreaking because we know that Gill kills her. And she's like worried about it and cares for him. What was that?
She still thinks that he'll do the right thing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I feel like maybe Gill hid his like sociopathic tendency from her. I don't know. I mean, was she aware that he could kill her? Like, or did he not even exhibit any of those kind of signs until the last moment? Because she doesn't seem to be frightened for her life or for anything. She didn't seem to be frightened of him before. She was just upset at him. So I don't know if he's just like snapped and he's been able to keep his like this, you know, I'm a normal person veneer, and he's really just a sociopath down, you know, underneath that.
Which sociopaths do. And
maybe, oh, sorry, go on, Debbie.
I was just gonna say, she knows he's capable of doing things not right, not quick. She's saying, please do the right thing. So, and she's clearly upset about it. So she knows he's capable of doing bad things. I guess she just didn't know how bad, or she knew and wasn't afraid. She didn't think he'd hurt her.
Yeah, I think she's talking about just doing illegal, financial stuff,
Right.
which is different than being violent.
Right.
I don't think she doesn't seem, at least with what we've seen so far, that she was fearful of him being violent.
Yeah, especially since she was like yelling at him and the last time we saw them interacting together. If she was afraid for her life, she probably wouldn't try to antagonize him. But I don't, like what you were saying, Mindy, I don't know. Maybe he has never exhibited sociopathic tendencies before, ever. Like maybe he's just to the point now where he's so stressed out about everything that's going on that he just snapped. So maybe even to him, this is a surprise, but we don't know. We don't know. But he looks so creepy in the beginning of this chapter. He looks so creepy.
Like no remorse at all.
Yeah, no remorse. That's what's so creepy. Like, oh, you stink. Like she's like, oh, she's doing it. She's rotting to offend him or something. Like his whole demeanor is so creepy, so scary. No remorse, no sadness. Not even, like we were talking about before, doesn't even question why there's a toy on the floor and with horribly has blood on it. Just, oh, and we thought jewelry was bad. He makes him look like, a nice guy.
Yeah, and at this point, Tora's out. He's furrowing his eyebrows and he jumps out the window. I think that he can't handle it. I think that whatever she's saying is triggering to him, and I'm assuming we're going to find out more as the story goes on.
Yeah, especially since he leaves. He is starting to get more upset when he hears her say, "Your family needs you," and then when she says, "Your baby needs you," he's like, "I'm going. I can't handle this.
I'm out.
Yeah,
I'm gone."
Whew. All right, and it seems like he's just thought of all that, and now he's back in the present, and you see he has this really intense look on his face. The background is dark. It's shape, going from black to brown. And Poppy looks up at him with a worried face because she can sense that his mood has shifted.
Yeah. And this flashback that he's thinking about right now all happened while they were talking about Quincy's blind optimism. And I think it just further underlines, highlights, bolds the fact that Quincy can be optimistic. He has that, whether, I don't know, maybe he can or can't. He chooses to be optimistic while Tora has this reality to deal with. And it's like, he can't bring himself to be optimistic about stuff. In the background where he is, it's just Tora and we see the top of Poppy's head and it's black fading down to brown. It's like where his thoughts are, the top of his head there is super dark, right? And then as it gets closer to Poppy, it gets lighter and lighter and lighter. And then when Poppy's looking up at him, the background is white. She's, again, it's just further emphasizing that she is the light in his life and worried for him, sweet girl.
That's so smart. Yeah, and that's when she looks up at him. Also, that's her perspective, and that's like her, what she's experiencing, and she's still in a happy state. They just made out in the closet. Like,
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and so they arrived at the coffee shop, and I have to note I really like the character design of the young lady over there. Cute bangs and hairstyle and makeup, and yeah, just random lady, but I like her. I think she looks trendy and cute. Maybe Poppy's mom, as we know, but
Never know.
And she's like, speaking of Quincy, will you be driving him to his appointment later? Yeah, well, we're leaving soon. And oh shoot, I'll make it quick. And we again have Tora's perspective, right? It's from his height, right? The camera goes up, so he's thinking. Ronzo hacked into the cams around this area, including those in this cafe. We have a view of it. Nothing suspicious, but I saw Quincy here with Erdine and Jacob, and he's looking up at it. Probably spilled shit to them from the looks on their faces. But they're not a threat, and they're reliable enough, so might as well rope them in. Gill's a crafty bastard, and we only picked up his trail when he finally returned home. And here we have a flashback, you on the phone, laptop. Big bro, I think we got our man. That was when I sent Quincy down to the office, so we can step up the pressure and force him to make his next move. And we have an aerial view, suspenseful lighting, Quincy and Gill, the standoff. Because F knows when I'll have my hands tied up with the clan affairs again, and she'll need her own network of support when shit hits the fan, which is very kind of Tora and insightful.
Yeah. And yes, and thoughtful and planful, and just amazing that he's even thinking about that at all with all of this other stuff going. He's planning for Poppy's emotional and physical safety still. I mean, it's still always, I just think that's amazing.
I think it also shows, oh, sorry, go ahead, Mindy.
Go ahead.
Oh, I think it also shows, like, I mean, this is a fairly quick interaction between him and Poppy. Walking to the cafe does not take that long. It's right next to where she works. And he's having all of these thoughts and all of these flashbacks and all of these things in a very short amount of time. And so he's like on high alert mode, even before they get into the cafe. Like, he may not show it in his facial expressions or the way he's talking with Poppy. But I can feel the panic in him growing as I read through it, because he's like thinking about Gill, thinking about Gill's wife, thinking about his trauma as a child. He's thinking about Poppy's safety. He's thinking about how he had you hack into the camps. He's thinking about Quincy. He's thinking about all these different things. He's thinking about, oh, I'm going to have to be tied up with clan affairs again in the future. So like thinking about all these things, and he's super preoccupied with like everything that's going on in his head.
You can feel the anxiety and the racing thoughts. She's talking coffee, and he's like got like the weight of the world on his shoulders, going through all this stuff in his head.
Yeah, and I think it's all crucial in understanding what happens. And I didn't quite pick up on it the first time I read it. It takes a bit of sinking in to understand why he does what he does. And yeah, like you said, she's like, I'll have an avocado latte, please. Which, what do you guys think of? How do you think that would taste?
I don't drink coffee, but that sounds disgusting.
Yes, avocado, good. Coffee, good. Avocado together with coffee, no.
I have to admit, I read that 3 times. I'm like, no, that does say avocado. I can't.
Well, she has a thing for avocados.
Yeah, she does. Okay.
And his phone is buzzing, and it's a text from Pinkie, effing Pinkie. Gas leak at the conference. Chaos everywhere. We lost him. Call us. And boom, his world goes dark. And now his thoughts suddenly go from, instead of being displayed in our regular text bubble or squares, everything is black. It's the aggressive handwriting of it's like the murder handwriting that the title is written in. And he is like not doing well. He's thinking to himself, after all the work your men had done for you, you still let him get away, huh? And he's blaming himself. He didn't let Gill get away. Gill got himself away. Gill planted some gas thing or whatever, presumably, but like self-blame, taking it on his shoulders. What were you doing other than being a pathetic, lovesick schoolboy? Ouch. Ow, don't talk to yourself that way. He's blaming himself for this, and focus in tension in his face, darkness closing in on him, and he's thinking back to her and the little stegosaurus toy and his Tyrannosaurus Rex toy. You could have put an end to this much earlier, you stupid mutt. And I don't know what he thought. What do you think he thought he could have done, right? Stupid mutt. Like,
God, so sad.
So yes.
To me, this is Vincent in his head. This is Vincent. This is his trauma thinking. This is not even his own thinking. He is just hearing everything that's been beaten into him through Vincent, and it's so clearly, obviously, it's meant to be dark. It's the darkest he can go. It's black and white, and he's calling himself a stupid mutt. I mean, that's Vincent right there. Yeah.
What is he thinking? You could have put an end to this much earlier. What does he mean? Like, whoa.
My guess is that he, like, instead of getting involved in Poppy's life, just like taking the notebook from her, or like taking her bag when they first met at the train station and getting the notebook from her bag from there, or maybe not causing Poppy physical harm, but having as little interaction with her as possible so that he could get this taken care of.
Interesting. I thought he was referring to Gill, and I was wondering what he thought he could have done with Gill. But yeah, that's it. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's what I think too, that he, if he treated her like he would have treated anybody else, if it was just a guy, he would have just taken the bag and walked away and never thought twice about it. But he got distracted. He was attracted to her and he got distracted, and he's berating himself because he doesn't think he deserves it and he shouldn't have done that. And now he's taking it out on Poppy. But I know, same thing. I'm like, oh, I know. Oh,
Yeah. So we have an image of him, and Poppy's like, black coffee for him to go, please. And everything's dark for him, and she's looking up at him, but he's kind of like in a daze. She's like, Tora, would you like? And he can't even process it. He thinks to himself, in the corner of my mind, I hear her voice as she placed our order, the sound of a little piece of heaven that had tumbled off a scooter and into my life. And he thinks to himself, well, it's not too late, which is to put an end to it. And Poppy's just fading even more, like she's just really going out of his consciousness. Tora, but as the darkness closed in on me, everything faded to black, including her. And he hears, you can still put an end to this the best way you know, son.
Ugh.
I love that reaction.
Gross. Vincent is so gross. Ew. And
Absolutely.
son is emphasized,
Yeah.
Ew.
Yeah.
Son, I hate the way that he thinks son. That's just that word. He just completely destroyed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Before we move on, just to backtrack a little bit to point out some of the visual aspects of what we've been reading through. Okay, so way back up to where Gill, the flashback with Gill, big bro, I think we got our man. The background is black, kind of indicating like shady business. What they're doing is not on the up and up. And when Tora gets the text, like you already mentioned this, Mindy, things start to fade to black. It gets darker. Poppy's face even fades out. Like he's not focused on Poppy really at all. He's like really sucked into his trauma here, into like fight or flight mode, panic mode. And then that's when Vincent's words in his head come out. But this all happens so quickly. I think Lily does a really good idea of showing us like how fast someone can go from more or less okay to like the frontal cortex shuts off, and they're just in survival mode. They're just they're triggered, they're panicking. It's awful, because in the time between Poppy saying, I'll have an avocado latte and a black coffee, please, to go, like that doesn't take that long to happen, just for someone to say that. And in that time, in between her saying, I'll have an avocado latte, please, he reads the text, and then Poppy says, what does she say? And a black coffee to go. And in that time, Tora is like, whoosh, time stands still for him a little bit, and things, he can't see clearly anymore. All he's seeing is black and gray and green, and he's just focused on what's going on with him internally. He can't even focus on Poppy anymore.
One of the things I was curious about this, because you're right, he's like completely shut down. It's almost like a fugue state. He became like a different person in that instant. Just the anxiety or that work mode. I didn't even know what you would call it for him. It kind of took over. And again, it's Vince in his head. You can still put an end to this in the best way you know how, son. And that's really, to me, that's so much as trauma speaking, is just taking over. His, like you said, frontal cortex is just shut down, and he's right there and being on the job. Something he's never.
Sorry, what was the last thing you said?
I was just saying something he's never been with Poppy. He's always been himself with Poppy. And
yeah, so how jarring it must be for her, because they're bantering, they're just walking, they just made out. And then all of a sudden, I'll pick you up at 6 tonight. Huh? She's like, what? He's completely forgotten about the coffee. And she said, oh, really? Thanks. But I'll be working late today, so 6 might be too. And he said, I'm not asking you. And everything is like this weird green tone in these panels, and it's like dark and grimy. And he said, I'm telling you, not even looking at her. And then he puts the money on the counter for the coffee. Don't be late. Thump. So it's like a really kind of aggressive move if it makes that big of a sound. And then walks away.
Right.
And then leaves the cafe without his coffee.
Mm-hmm. Ouch. Whoa.
He stopped seeing her as a person in that moment. That's the way he treats people. That's his work mode. You can't see people as people, and that's the way he treated Poppy.
Whoa. So the discussion on Lily's Patreon was like amazing. I read all the comments, and I was very impressed with people's insight and sharing their life experience. And some people who had their parents be who were military said that they experienced this whiplash as well because of their parents' PTSD, and like how quickly they would go from normal to triggered, and boom, like they would completely change. And yeah, that's what's happening here. Whew. So there was a lot of discussion about, well, maybe let's finish the episode and then we'll do that discussion. So yeah, he walks out, and now we go to Poppy's perspective, and the colors return, and the coffee person here, 2 cups to go, and she's like, oh thanks, right? As much as whatever happened, she's still a polite person, and she is strong, and she keeps it together. But oh thanks, and they're like, and then the guy whispers, are you two okay? That was kind of harsh, which credit to him. It's great when people see something happening in front of them that isn't okay and want to help. I think that's wonderful, and more people should be doing that. We should all do that. And she just nods, and she's like, you can keep the change. She fumbles with the coffee. He's like, sure, see you soon. Right? She's obviously like getting very emotionally overwrought, and she doesn't want to like spend a moment longer there that she has to. She just has to leave. And they're like, careful, it's hot. Oh, I'm okay. Right? She's fumbling around. She's not thinking right. She's obviously not handling it correctly, and she just wants to go. And she leaves. She's already biting her lip, and the people are like, poor thing, damn, that was rough to watch. That chick must have nerves of steel or something. I burst into tears of that scary looking mofo who snapped at me like that. No shit. And he looked like he was about to go shoot someone. And we see her walking out. She sits down on that little bench where she sat before with Erdine, and the coffee's on her lap, and her hands are shaking, and the tears are falling, and she is crying. And we end with Tora speeding along on the road with a very, very grim and dead look on his face, because he is in work mode, and he's that. So what do you think of, a lot of people were having a discussion about how he treated her and what is an appropriate reaction maybe for Poppy. How would you react if someone did this to you, like in real life, or if someone, like your friend said, oh, the guy I'm dating did this? So yeah, let's hear your thoughts.
Well, I don't think that Tora was like abusive. He was not nice, certainly, and that was rude to snap at her like that and leave. And like, it's not how you want to treat someone that you're interested in or that you have feelings for. It's not how you want to treat anybody. But I don't think he was like to the point where it was like as if he had hit her or something. Well, I don't know. I don't want to compare trauma. That's not cool. But I don't want to excuse his behavior either. It's not okay. But I think considering what he's been through, he handled himself the best way he knew how. And when he shut down like that, he left as soon as possible instead of trying to not be in that place and pretend like everything was okay. because they think that could have been worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, removing yourself from the situation where you know you're gonna snap can be the best thing.
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
I think there's a few things. A few people commented. I was just reading the comments on Webtoons, and some people commented, "Well, what do you expect? He's in the mafia. This is the way he's going to act." Because it was offensive the way he acted, and to me, what was worse was that he worked so hard to get her to open up and to kind of meet with him, be in that place where she's sharing her feelings. He called her commitment phobe, and he tried so hard to pull her out. And so she was finally opening up and trusting him and saying, okay, you know what, fine, you're going to give me everything I need, all the validation I need, so I can open up to you emotionally. And then he does that, and he turns around and he treats her like that, and just spun her on her head, and she just right back to where she started. She can't trust her own instincts anymore. She tried to trust this guy, and then he just threw her away like that. And not that he intended to do it. He wasn't intentionally being abusive. He was stuck in his own head. He was feeling his overwhelmed with guilt and responsibility and his own feelings and his own darkness. And he didn't do it intentionally, but he still did it. And he put her in a position where she has no idea what's going on. And in a way, he is responsible, because he did know he shouldn't. He's not in a place where he's ready to be with somebody like that. And he, if he knew he was capable of just shutting down like that and hurting her like that, I don't think that he was being fair to her by pulling her in and trying to build that relationship. And then just to turn around and validate her and show her all this wonderful, this can be so wonderful, and I'm going to be this great guy to you. But then I could easily just turn around and be this absolute asshole to you, and unexpectedly. And I think that's what hurts her the most, because she was finally opening and finally learning to trust, and then this happened. So personally, I'm angry at him. So if it was my friend, I would be like, yeah, you need to have a real good talking to him. I wouldn't say necessarily dump him, but we definitely need a conversation.
Yeah, that was really well said. And it makes me so sad for Poppy, because she immediately stopped making eye contact with everyone around her and really tried to keep her composure, which someone, I forget who, there's a couple of people on Patreon that made the connection that she's probably feeling triggered herself right now, and how jewelry used to treat her.
Exactly.
And even maybe back to abandonment issues with her mom too. And she had to learn how to keep herself composed enough to where she could find some private place to kind of let it all out. And so she walked out of the coffee shop and was like, yep, fine, okay, yep, I got the coffee, thank you so much, blah blah blah. And then you see on the corner, she's super alone, that wide shot. All by herself. There's literally no one else out. It's just her. And she goes and finds that little spot, and that's where she feels safe enough. She can't even go back up to the office yet. She has to go cry first. And she doesn't feel like she can cry in the office. She has to do it by herself outside.
And it's so sad. She's sitting there with those 2 coffees, and just you could feel she doesn't even know what to think, what to feel, like what just happened.
Yeah. And Debbie, what you were saying before, how, I love that you said that Tora that gotten into a relationship with her, because we all knew that something like this was going to happen. Tora said all the time, I don't want to be in a relationship. I'm not for it. I don't have the life suited out for it. She can't be with me. And that's the main, dilemma of this story, is that how can you be with someone who has such a life? It's not, some people were actually sharing their stories of people who they'd been with someone who also was in the mafia, and it was like, yeah, it's not really tenable. And that's the whole dilemma. He has to get out. They can't have a relationship when he's doing these things. And the other thing that I really think is amazing about this whole story is that it shows you what it's like to be in a relationship with people who have difficult backgrounds. And so many of us either come from those backgrounds or are in relationships with people with those backgrounds, and it is not easy. And, you know, a lot of times, sometimes society throws these people away and says they're beyond hope and beyond redemption and they're broken. And this whole story, I believe, is about showing, no, they're fixable and they're redeemable. And with enough self-love and self-determination, they can fix themselves. Maybe, yes, with help and encouragement and love of people around them, but that people who are broken can still be good and can still have redeemable qualities about them and can still overcome the difficulties that they're from. And I think that is such a powerful message and incredibly like necessary for people to read and just pivotal in life. I think it's wonderful. You know, we read webtoons for entertainment, but this story just surpasses the entertainment level. I think the story is just so pivotal. I'm just so impressed. I really am.
It is absolutely, I agree. I think it surpasses the medium. It's I mean, the artwork is beautiful, the story is incredible, so I shouldn't say it surpasses the medium. You wouldn't expect a webtoon to be so elevated, but it really is. It's a very, very well done story, and that's what I love about it too. I agree with you. I think it's not just a cartoon. It's or a comic. I shouldn't say cartoon, comic. It is something. It's literature. It's modern literature, absolutely. So
Yeah, and it really, there's so much to think about. There's so much to chew on. Something that you said, Debbie, that Tora should not have tried to get into a relationship with her if he knew he acted this way. I don't know that he's aware, honestly.
yeah,
I don't know that he's ever had this sort of relationship with anyone before. So I don't know if he's aware that this is how he reacts with people. Because a lot of other people, he can, like with Quincy, he can shut down like that, and it won't bother Quincy necessarily that much. It's like kind of something to be expected, or like Quincy would understand and would know like what's going on behind the scenes or what's going on in his head a little bit. And then like his men, his little bros, like they would probably see this sort of switch before, and they would probably kind of understand it as well. So I don't know that Tora is aware that of what he's doing to Poppy, or how his actions are affecting her.
yeah. I think he is not stable. He knows he's not stable enough. He knows that he can become this. He knows it's not okay to say to her. On some level, he knows it's not okay to say to her. Not okay to say to her, "I'm not asking you. I'm telling you." That's not the relationship that they have. He's not in a position above her. That's not what their relationship is like. Yet he can't not help that, because he's so guilt-ridden and he's so angry at himself for this situation going on, that in a way, and again, not in a purposeful way, but because of his own issues, he's dragging her with him. And he's as much as he cares about her and wants to be with her and probably does love her at this point, but he's just not there where he's not able to communicate. This might happen. If this happens, then it's not you, it's me. But he can't even communicate that. So she's probably in a place where she's feeling gaslighted again. There's this guy saying one thing and then doing another thing. So she's so barely into developing her self-esteem again. He just pushed her way back. And, you know, I'm
After.
right. Yeah. Like immediately. And I'm hoping that there's some really good conversations coming up in future episodes. I'm sure there will be, because I don't think Lily Disc would do that to us, but I definitely, I just don't know how long it's going to be, and I'm scared to death to see what's going to happen with Gill. Like, what is his issue with Poppy, and is Tora going to be around to even recognize it? Well, no, I don't think he would ever not leave her in danger, but
Well, he is leaving her when he knows like Gill just escaped, and he's like, I think he's probably going to go try to find him now. But like, he's also leaving Poppy alone. Like, is he going to send someone to watch her?
right.
I don't know. But one thing I will say is like, why didn't he say anything to her in those last couple of days? You know, he was planning on coming clean to her, as he told Quincy, but he didn't say anything to her yet. He didn't tell her anything about Gill. Everyone thought her life was in danger, and they didn't tell her, which, if my life is in danger, people, please tell me. Like, do not be like, oh, she has a lot on her plate right now. Like, I don't want to worry her. No, I want to know. Like, that's something pretty serious to tell people. So, like, and like, he didn't tell her about the mafia thing, and even though he decided that he would, and I understand he probably didn't want to tell her because he didn't want to ruin what they had. He didn't want to bring it up. It's a tough conversation. He didn't see her, blah, blah, blah. He probably only feels comfortable like when he talks to her in person. But like, that's contributing to what happened. Like, if she would have known that he's on the hunt for Gill and Gill is loose, like, she probably would have been able to make that connection and be like, oh, did something just happen? You get a text about Gill that, you know, that one made you snap. But he didn't communicate that with her, so she doesn't know.
I mean,
sorry, go ahead, Debbie.
No, go ahead, Laura. Okay.
I was just saying that probably also would have helped build her confidence even more if Tora was also suspicious of Gill. Like, she's picking up on these sus vibes about Gill, but she hasn't told anyone because she's like, I don't have any proof, but I'm feeling really weird around him. He is giving me weird vibes. So if Tora had communicated that with her, one, it would have made her, you know, probably put her in a safer position, and two, would have validated the things that she's already thinking, and three, probably would have brought them closer a little bit, because it would have led into that conversation, that tough conversation that Tora's putting off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and that being said, I also wanted to say, like, yes, we're pointing out all these things that they should have done, and like, I don't know about you, but I see myself in not necessarily these particular kinds of mistakes, but like relationship mistakes. Like, we all do things that we know either before or after that like was a really stupid idea and bad, but like, it's tough. It's very, very hard. You can't do everything right. Mm-hmm. No matter how much you try. Mm-hmm. So even while we're saying shoulda, coulda, woulda, like, we understand everyone's human.
Right, because we have more information and we're objective and we're not in the moment flustered.
Right, and we're at this omniscient viewpoint where we can see both sides and we know what everybody's thinking. It's like, we don't know, Tora doesn't know what Poppy's thinking and vice versa, and even though we know what they're thinking.
Yeah. Instead of listening to hours of this podcast that psychoanalyzes every move that they make, if they would listen to this podcast, they would know themselves a lot better.
Everybody should have their own podcast.
That would be horrifying.
Absolutely.
A team of people devoted to scrutinizing everything you do and say and think.
Oh my God. Oh, I would be mortified.
Oh no.
I think the last thing I want to point out is that Poppy, going back to like what she's feeling probably very traumatized right now, because they had just been making out, and that was like a point of contention between her and Jewelry, was how far to take their physical intimacy. And Tora kind of pushed that boundary with her a little bit by asking to see more of her, to like remove some of her clothing, which she did until she wasn't comfortable, and then she covered back up again. But then they went to the cafe and then he left. And so she's like, is that all he wanted? Was everything fake? You know, did it all just lead to like, he just wants the physical stuff, he doesn't care about anything else? That would be going through my mind. I would be very confused. I would be very upset if I was in Poppy's shoes.
Absolutely. I mean, the way he acted towards Jewelry and Moonbright, and the way he was just so protective and affectionate towards her, and then to just, and she had no idea. For her, it was, they went from coffee to, I'm just picking you up at 6 and he's walking out. She had no idea what was going on in his head. None of that was there for her. So for her, it was just literally a switch was flipped and he's gone. And so she's left to figure out what the hell happened? Was the black coffee? Did he not like? Should not have taken it? Hmm? Yeah,
He's not a fan of unusual drinks.
yeah, that might have been it, Ashley.
Well,
Talking about not having that omniscient viewpoint for her, she had no idea. He was fine, and then he wasn't, and it was literally, that's it. That just good and then bad.
mhm.
He needs to talk to her.
Yeah, yes, I'm excited to see how this resolves itself or doesn't resolve itself and heightens the drama until we get to some kind of like confrontation, resolution.
Right.
But yeah, it'll be juicy, that's for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for coming and for sharing your insights. This was great and fantastic. And I'm kind of too tired to do bonus questions. Sorry.
You look
So-
like.
Well, thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you.
Really, really good episode. Very, very insightful.
I feel lucky that I was just gonna say, I feel lucky that we got this episode because it was such an intense one that was really a lot to pull apart.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Have
Thank
a great night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you so much to my current patrons: Susie, Lady Libris, Lily, Jenny, Haley, Maria, Molly, Veronica, Emily, Joe, Rochelle, Saucy Talgos, Meg, Ann Rose, Priya, Alexa, Misty, Laura, Joanne, Patty, Jen, Imelda, Esther, I'm watching 𝗄𝗿𝗶𝗴, Poppy, Marie, Jen, Emily, Jean, Jen, Erin, D, and Kay. Your support is truly appreciated.